Hi everyone, my name is Jess Rice. I'm a parent here at Greene Towne. I have Zoe, who's in Mr. Patrick's primary class, and I've got Oscar, who is in Miss Ann's primary class. And I am doing our March book for the You Don't Have to Read the book club. And it is titled What's Math Got to Do with It by Jo Boaler. Jo Boaler is a professor at Stanford, and she's the co-founder of U Cubed, which is an organization that researches how people actually learn mathematics. Her central argument is really striking. She says that many people believe that they hate math, but what they actually hate is how math was taught to them. Boaler argues that math classrooms often misrepresent what mathematics actually is, and that this has huge consequences for confidence, learning, and even career choices. Okay, so naturally, let's start with a quick question. The question is, estimate the answer to this equation, 12 over 13 plus 7 over 8. Is the answer 1, 2, 19, or 21? I'll give you a moment to have a think about it. Now, some of you will be confident you got this right. Some of you, and that's me, I'm with you, saw this math question for the first time, and instead of trying to solve it, you instantly just skipped to panicking. You might have thought, I must get this right, otherwise everyone will think I'm stupid. You might have thought, what was the procedure needed to multiply fractions? No, wait, we're adding them. Do I add the top and then the bottom, or do I flip one over? It's often hard to know what to do in this situation because you were taught so long ago what the procedure was to get the answer. So by this stage, you've panicked and you decided to make a guess. Now, if you selected B, you're correct. If you guessed B, you're also correct, but you have no business getting any points for this as you have a 25% chance of randomly selecting the correct answer. This question comes from a test that was provided to students in 1982 before the US made sweeping reforms in mathematics classrooms. Only 24% of 13-year-olds answered this correctly, and 37% of 17-year-olds answered correctly. And maybe as we just demonstrated, some of us adults don't seem to have the skill sets to reasonably answer what is an extremely simple question. So you might have skipped over this because you were too busy panicking, but the question is asking for an estimate, not the actual solution. Both of these fractions are almost whole numbers, so we're literally looking at 1 plus 1 equals 2. And if you're one of the parents that got that right, well done, good on you. You know, you can have a trophy. So let's have a close look at the traditional classrooms and the type of teaching and learning that has given us these wonderful mathematics skill sets. Boaler says that if you walk into a math classroom today, you might feel like you've stepped back into the Victorian era. The structure is very familiar. The teacher explains the method at the front of the room. The students copy it down from the board. Then they practice this same process with many similar problems. So success in these types of classrooms often means speed and accuracy. And the problem with this is that it turns math into something that you perform rather than something that you explore or understand. So why doesn't this work? Boaler draws on a lot of research that shows that this approach to mathematics can cause math anxiety, fixed mindsets, memorization without understanding, and a loss of curiosity. This approach doesn't just make math boring, it can actually damage students' confidence. Many people grow up believing, I'm just not a math person. But Boaler draws on Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset, which shows that intelligence isn't fixed. One of the most fascinating findings from brain research is that when students make mistakes while learning in mathematics or any lesson or subject for that matter, their brain actually grows. Mistakes activate areas of the brain and it creates new connections. So the real disappointment here in how mathematics has been taught in the past is that this is the very thing that classrooms are discouraging. Struggle and mistakes, because that's actually how learning happens. So if this approach doesn't work, why is it still so common? Boaler describes in detail decades of debate known as the math wars. Some groups pushed for more conceptual learning and problem solving, and others worried students wouldn't learn standard methods. Instead of looking at both arguments critically and spending the time to create programs that effectively took the best from both sides, professionals within different institutions rejected one or the other. And these ideas were seen as polarizing, with an inability to teach, but using both philosophies. Professionals and teachers had to be on one side or the other. This resulted in some teachers who wanted to adopt more contemporary teaching practices being told that they had to teach in a more traditional way. At the same time, schools became increasingly driven by standardized testing, which tended to reward memorized procedures rather than reasoning. And add to that pressure to get through extensive amounts of content in the curriculum, which forces teachers to rely on direct instruction and rote learning, rather than taking the time for more creative teaching and learning practices. And finally, a very cultural myth, and a very powerful one, that some people are naturally good at math and some aren't. And you're probably wondering why Barbie is on the screen, but as she once famously said, math class is tough. So Boaler's research shows that everyone can develop mathematical thinking and explains how schools and parents can support students to develop the critical skills to succeed in math. And I should note here that Boaler isn't particularly critical of, she's not 100% critical of direct instruction and a more traditional approach to teaching and learning. But what she is critical of is the shutting down of contemporary ideas and different ways of introducing pedagogy that create more ability to be creative within mathematics. One extra point that Boaler discusses is the unique impact of math reforms in the 1980s, which required math teachers to provide more real-world context in which students could see math in action. And this is wonderful, yes. But because of the speed of the reforms, many mathematics publication houses had to scramble to meet these new curriculum standards, and this resulted in poorly written problems and scenarios. This has continued to compound, with problems created to fit the math, rather than the math used to explain a scenario. And it's resulting in a lot of funny world situations that Boaler likes to call the math world. Math world, along with other traditional classroom characteristics, is illustrated perfectly by none other than The Simpsons. So I'm just going to give you a little brain break and we can watch The Simpsons together.
Art, remember to visualize the complex problems and relax. The test will start now.
At 7:30 a.m., an express train traveling 60 miles an hour leaves Santa Fe bound for Phoenix, 520 miles away.
Shh! Visualize it, Bert.
At the same time, a local train traveling 30 miles an hour and carrying 40 passengers leaves Phoenix bound for Santa Fe. It's 8 cars long and always carries the same number of passengers in each car. An hour later, the number of passengers equal to half the number of minutes past the hour get off, but 3 times as many plus 6 get on. At the second stop, half the passengers plus 2 get off, but twice as many get on as got on at the first stop.
Ticket, please.
I don't have a ticket.
Come with me, boy. We've got the stowaway, sir.
I'll pay. How much? Twice the fare from Tucson to Flagstaff minus 2/3 of the fare from Albuquerque to El Paso.
Bart, there are students in this class with a chance to do well. Will you stop bothering them?
It's not bothering me, Mrs. Krabappel. I'm finished. May I go outside and read under a tree?
Certainly, Martin.
Okay, so what does Boaler say that classrooms should look like? In any successful math classroom, Boaler argues that students should work together on challenging problems, explain and justify their thinking, use diagrams, graphs, and models, explore multiple solution methods, and ask their own mathematical questions. And so math becomes a language for thinking and problem solving. Boaler discusses one of her research projects where she studied students in math classes in two very different schools in the UK. At Amber Hill, they taught a traditional approach to math. The teacher lectured and wrote on the board. The students copied down the lesson learning and completed the exercises. Classes are grouped, meaning students are placed in class based on their ability and their past exam performance. And they learn about trig, Sakatoa. At Phoenix Park, they used project-based learning and the communicative approach to teaching math. Project-based learning is a teaching approach where students learn by actively working on real-world projects over an extended period of time. And the communicative approach asks students to learn about the different ways mathematics can be communicated through words, diagrams, tables, symbols, objects, and graphs. Students in class are of mixed ability and would work in groups, often helping and teaching each other. Sometimes they will spend a whole lesson on one problem. Now, a criticism of the Phoenix Park approach is that the problem-based learning with a peer-to-peer interaction can waste time, and teachers don't have the time to teach students all of the curriculum so that they can do well on tests. What was really interesting about this research project was that the Amber Hill students were expected to do well on their examinations because their approach to teaching and learning was meant to be exam orientated. But it was actually the Phoenix Park students who achieved significantly higher examination grades. The Phoenix Park students also achieved higher grades than the national average, despite having started at their school significantly lower than the national average. The examination success of the students at Phoenix Park surprised people in England, and the research study was reported in all the national newspapers. People believed that a project-based approach would result in great problem solvers, but they had not thought that an approach that was relaxed and project-based with no drill and practice could also result in higher examination grades. In class, the Amber Hill students had always been shown methods and then practiced them. In the examination, they needed to choose the methods that they had to use, and many of them found this difficult because they had not been taught how to do this. The research project was a longitudinal study, and they also measured the usefulness of mathematics and the different approaches taught in their classrooms to their professional lives. And it goes without saying that the Phoenix Park students significantly outweighed the Amber Hill students in finding this approach useful to their everyday life and their professional careers. So knowing more about the context of how math is and has been taught in schools should help parents to make informed decisions about their own children's learning. Boaler does make some recommendations about what parents can ask schools when exploring how that school might teach math. So about learning, you could ask questions like, do students explain their reasoning, or are multiple solutions or strategies encouraged? You could ask about assessment. Are students assessed on thinking and problem solving, or are they just hoping to get the correct answers? And you could ask about grouping. Are students tracked by ability, or are they mixed together in mixed ability classrooms? Now, I won't go into this too much, but essentially Boaler does mention that many schools will choose to stream students in classes based on ability, which is often what parents do want for mathematics classes. However, there is a lot of evidence that show mixed ability classrooms often produce higher achievement for all students at either end of the performance spectrum. So it's not just helping the kids that are struggling, it's also helping push the kids that are advanced as well. And this research is across subjects. This isn't just specific to mathematics. And you can read the book or do your own research if you're curious about that. All right, at the end of this book is a chapter that I felt most excited to read. It's called Giving Children the Best Mathematical Start, Activities and Advice for Parents. Boaler starts this chapter by reminding us that when she comes across someone with a love of math, she often says that that love was not fostered in the classroom, but usually people will reference puzzles or individuals that made them realize the beauty of the world through mathematics. She says not to underestimate the role of simple interactions in the home and the role of puzzles, games, and patterns in the mathematical development and inspiration of young people. She says instead of giving them extra math homework, get them to play with Lego, jigsaw puzzles, Rubik's cubes, threading beads, puzzles, and problem flashcards. And I know I've just put a heap of colourful products on the screen, and I'm not suggesting that you go out and buy all the things, nor did Boaler. But if someone asks what to get your child for their next birthday, this might give you some ideas of some beneficial items that you can have in your home. More importantly, Boaler encourages us to always be asking our young people questions about the world around them and make them curious. Look for opportunities to engage in our world mathematically. So you could ask questions like, how long will it take us to get home? How much will lunch cost? Should we wait for the bus or walk home, which would be quicker? Lastly, she says it's critical to teach our children about number flexibility. And I haven't touched on this in the presentation, but Boaler explains its importance in detail in the book. Number flexibility is the ability to think about numbers in different ways and to choose the most efficient strategy to solve a problem. And instead of always following one fixed method, like a standard algorithm, a person with number flexibility can break apart numbers, rearrange them, and use mental math strategies to make calculations easier. So Boaler provides specific details in the final chapter of the book, how parents can teach number flexibility to their children. And if you want to, I would recommend picking the book up in our parent library. So that's it from me. As I mentioned, you can pick up the book from the parent library. These are available to the whole community and you can loan it whenever you like. I did skim over a lot of the research, but she goes into it in detail, and she has a heap of resources online that you can look into. There is also, she's very strongly involved in this debate with the math wars. So you can see a lot online showing both perspectives about how math should be taught. And if you're interested in that, I would recommend looking into that as well. Okay, thank you.